Ford's history goes back about 125 years, but a lot of people don't know that a lot of the V8 innovations started well before World War I and World War II. So we're going to talk about the best Ford V8 engines of all time and the best airplane engines from World War I and World War II and how they all tie in together. If you're a mechanical engineer, you'll find this very interesting. So Ford was doing the modular engines in the 90s and early 2000s, but a lot of people don't know, where did this single overhead cam really become popular? And it's in World War I. Hispano-Suiza designed some of the best French airplanes that were used in World War I as well as in World War II, and they used single overhead cam. Now consider, these engines were first developed in 1915 through 1917, which is about 17 years before even the Ford Flathead first came out. So the Hispano-Suiza was way ahead of its time. Now, Ford definitely did a lot of innovations after World War II. They came out with the FE engines, the Cleveland engines, they had the Windsor engines, they had the 385 big block. They had a lot of engine families. And so what Ford decided to do is to compete with General Motors. They came out with different engines for different purposes, where Chevy had the small block, and each of the brands eventually went to these corporate engines. So they were able to streamline the manufacturing process, where Ford took the innovation that goes all the way back to World War I, was that single overhead cam or cam over block gave you better low, mid-range, and high range at RPMs similar to warplanes. Now, why did warplanes choose single overhead cam over push rods? Well, because they were more reliable and they were actually more lightweight than a pushrod engine. They're also more lightweight than a dual overhead cam engine. So single overhead cam was the dominant powertrain for both sides during World War I and World War II. Now, most of the American side was using a V8 configuration or a V12 configuration, and the Germans were using a BMW inline 6 configuration. Both those configurations, ironically enough, are still being sold in automotive vehicles today. So that's a Dewotin 520 fighter plane right there. That was 36 liters, and that was a V12 single overhead cam engine. So one thing that single overhead cam has an advantage over the pushrod engines is it removes the pushrods altogether, which reduces the weight. Then it also reduces the need for a second camshaft in a dual overhead cam. So you reduce the weight by about 50 to 60 pounds per vehicle. You also reduce the manufacturing costs of dual overhead cam, and you also increase the performance over a pushrod engine. So Ford's modular engines is probably the best evolution from the first World War I SPOD planes that were using single overhead cam